I look at all the things going on back home in America right now, and it's tough to defend it. It's tough to defend anything. One thing that is for sure is a complete lack of leadership. My master's degree is in leadership. I've studied this stuff my whole life. People often ask me who are the greatest leaders you've ever seen. To be honest with you, in my opinion, the best leaders I have ever seen in my life are non-commissioned officers in the military. Yeah, the officers will take exception to that, but they're like a completely separate group of people. It's a different echelon. They are systematically separated from the troops in many ways. It's the NCOs that are in the trenches with the troops, leading them. They're the ones that keep the military going. Who doesn't like playing in the mud a little bit just to try and explore some of these other places? This is so much fun. I miss doing stuff like this. I also believe that there are natural born leaders. It's just an innate quality that some people have. A lot of it really does come from experience. But I also believe that leadership is something that you can learn if you study it. But I have read so many books. Here's a few of the books that I could recommend if you're interested in the subject. A long time ago, I was a very big reader, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. This was when I was a troop, this is when I was a student, and of course in grad school, I had to read a ton of books. It was kind of overwhelming. And then post-grad school, I still read a lot. I recall many of these books that have heavily influenced my career and my everyday life as a teacher and as a human being. So let me share with you what some of those are. The first author you have to read is Warren Bennis. On Becoming a Leader, The Nature of Leadership was another one he did. And what I thought was probably the most humorous one was Managing People is Like Herding Cats. And I know you've heard that term in today's zeitgeist lately, but yeah, herding cats, it came from Warren Bennis. Of course, you have John Wooden, who was UCLA coach. That guy is so quotable. You can just take quotes and make memes all day long with what that guy had to say. If you want to go all the way back into history, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, which I think should be required reading for anyone in business school. Jim Collins, I remember he did that book, From Good to Great. This is a book that my mother had bought when I was a child, and she kept it in a little den in our house. Daniel Goleman, he did Primal Leadership, a couple of other ones. His specialty is on emotional intelligence, and that is really a thing here in China. But the idea of emotional intelligence seems to be pushed away in Western society in favor of IQ, which I think is a shame. Here in China, they understand what emotional intelligence is, and they understand how it is actually more important than IQ. Daniel Pink is one of my favorite authors when it comes to motivational theory, drive theory. Of course, anything by Abraham Maslow, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are, again, motivational psychology. But by far, I think the number one author, I've read almost every single one of his books, is Peter Drucker. He was like the textbook author for all the textbooks I had in school. The Effective Executive, I think, was one of the books that had a big impact on me. But his ideas are rather old. They're a couple of decades old. It goes to show you that the textbooks in universities need to be updated a little bit. But nonetheless, he's one of the pioneers in leadership theory. Well, there's some qualities I think we can all agree on that certain leaders have. Things like empathy, trust, honesty, inspiration, humbleness, acceptance, that nobody is perfect. Communication, the ability to communicate well, and also purpose and being able to articulate that purpose to other people. It's just a beautiful day here in Zhongshan. One of the bluest skies I think I've ever seen here. So let's get into my rules. To give praise where praise is due. Doesn't matter where it comes from. It could be from your best friend, it could be from your enemy. If praise is due, you gotta give it. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I've heard many variations of this in the past, but it's very true. Remember, building relationships is very difficult and very important. You can always learn what to know, but it's not always as easy to create and maintain relationships. Create and maintain relationships with facts, very, very easy. I recall when I was in the service, there were many commander's intents, they would say, right? One of them being do not alibi, do not point fingers, things like this. The core values of the Air Force have stuck with me my whole life. Integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. You can apply that to anyone's life. You will fail. You will fail in life. You will fail in your endeavors. You will fail in your relationships. You'll fail in your leadership. Knowing that and being okay with that truth allows you to accept it when it happens and learn from it and move on. Next, we have the healing power of laughter. I do not consider myself a funny, humorous guy, but there are a couple of jokes that I have in my back pocket that I whip out when the occasion calls for it. You ever see two people fighting and then one of them cracks a joke and it seems to relieve all the tension in the room? Serious moments can sometimes be broken up with a good joke. Always defer to the people who have more knowledge than you and more experience than you. That's okay. That's part of being a leader, is trying to find the best solutions from the right people. Don't let your ego get involved. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you need help, get it. Practice the art of reframing and paradigm shifting. Another way to saying this is look on the bright side or walk in someone else's shoes. As a leader, it's your job to provide the tools needed to get the job done. That includes training, that includes encouragement, that includes the physical tools. My father used to tell me, he said, don't be a poor craftsman who blames his tools. It's one of the best pieces of advice I think I've ever had. You need to ask questions and listen, and not just hear it, but really listen. You have to be sincere in your listening. There's that old cliche that the truth will set you free. Maybe, maybe not, but you definitely need to embrace the truth. I would rather embrace the truths than to embrace lies. Don't waste your energy on things you have no control over. It's obvious to say it's better to focus on the things that you can actually enact some change in, right? Know your strengths, but probably more important than that is to know your weaknesses. I tell everybody, okay, it's a good thing to list your strengths, but I think it shows more character to be able to list your weaknesses, and then after that, explain what you're doing to improve upon those weaknesses. I've said this before, but the number 2 rule in leadership is surprisingly to practice good followership. Most leaders, most great leaders, are at one time a follower, and understanding those principles is very important, because no matter where you are in life, no matter what you do, we are all bootmakers to kings. The number 1 rule for leadership: everything is your fault. Everything. The good or the bad. It's why you are in the leadership position to begin with. It's why you make the big bucks, because the buck stops with you. Pointing fingers at someone else and saying it's that person's fault, that's not leadership. Real leaders understand that they take responsibility for everything. So that's it, that's my list. It's not a comprehensive list, but it's a list that I've compiled through my experience. If there are any other rules that you think I've missed, by all means, put them down below in the comment section. Let's have a talk about it. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts on the subject. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.